Hey guys, it's just Math, y'all. Hope you're with us today, joining us to learn about quadratics, because that's what we're doing. This is a fourth video that I want you to watch. I think this is going to be our last one. So here we go. Let's jump into this problem here. This is number 6 on your homework. It's a little different than the others. It's set up just a little bit different, but we're going to walk through this one. This is a parabola. And it tells us to identify the vertex, the axis of symmetry that intercepts both the x and the y, whether this thing opens up or opens down. And then we're going to do a little sketch. So first of all, the vertex. Remember, you've got your document that tells you everything you need to know. And, well, not everything you need to know, but this is your document that you're going to follow. So the first thing, we look at our A, then we do our vertex, and let's see what that tells us. Okay, so looking at our A is -3. And so since A is -3, A is less than 0. Okay, so since A is less than 0, it looks like this, and that's opens down. Now this is going to actually be a question at the end of number 6. So be aware that this actually is something you need to type in. Okay, so we know what it looks like. All right, then we're going to do our vertex. And again, you have the formula for the x value, which is -b over 2a. And then once you do that, you plug it in. So this is going to give me -6 over 2 times -3, which is -6 over -6, which is 1. And then I plug that in to find the y value for my b. So now plug that in. I'm going to plug in the 1. So it'd be -3, 1 squared plus 6 times 1 minus 1. And that's going to give me -3 plus 6 minus 1, which is going to give me 2. So now my vertex is 1, 2. 1 and 2. That's the vertex. Now I can go ahead and start thinking about graphing this now that I have a point. And so it opens downward. My vertex is 1, 2, and it opens downward. So I am going to have an x-intercept and a y-intercept. Okay, I do have both y-intercepts and x-intercepts. Okay, so now let's do the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 0, c, and our c is -1. So I'm going to go ahead and point that. There we go. 0, -1. Then there's a point that's also symmetric to this one that I can do because I know my axis of symmetry runs through here. And so there is another point there. This is the y-intercept. So I've got 2 points that I can work with, 3 points now that I can work with. All right, so that's the y-intercept. Let's go ahead and talk about that axis of symmetry. I don't know where it asks for it. It asks for the vertex first, so there it is. The axis of symmetry, well, that comes straight off the vertex. The axis of symmetry is that y values, excuse me, that x value, x equal 1. Right, so this you're going to type in. That you're going to type in. It may already have the x equal on it, so just be aware of that. The y-intercept is 0, -1. It may only want you to type in the -1, so look at that. Okay, so I've got the vertex done, the axis of symmetry done. I've got the y-intercept done, but now I got to do the x-intercept. All right, this is where this one gets tough. Okay, the x-intercept, remember the x-intercepts is done by doing the equation equal to 0. And so for this one, I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula. All right, so here we go. So x is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared. I'm going to go ahead and square 6. I know what that is. You can type it in your calculator, but make sure you get it right. B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now there's a lot of negatives in here, so I really need to think this through before I jump in. So this is going to be 36 minus 12. I've got 3 negatives there, which is going to produce a negative. A -4, a -3, a -1, all going to produce a negative. So I'm going to get 36 minus 12, which is 24, and that's going to give me 2 square roots of 6. So I have -6 plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 over -6. Now, here's where we need to stop and think about what's going on here. This is going to break into -6 over -6 plus or minus 2 square roots of 6 over 6. So I want you to notice this is 1. And that's going to always be the case. No, let me rephrase that. That matches something, doesn't it? That matches, where did we get 1 before? Right there. Are these always going to be the same? Oh, yes. Because remember, the quadratic formula is -b over 2a. Isn't that what we just did right here? Okay, so yes, that part is always going to be your vertex. And then we have plus an amount and then minus an amount. Well, in this particular situation, our amount is a crazy decimal. It is a crazy decimal. So it's plus the square root of 6 over 3, and then 1 minus the square root of 6 over 3. Okay? Or you can, look at this as -3 plus or minus the square root of 6 over 3. Negative. Anyway, but this is a decimal. Okay? So as a decimal, to graph it, I've got to type this in. But if I was actually graphing it by hand, I would use a decimal. Okay, so just be ready to type it in just like this, but be ready to get that calculator out if you need to. All right. So for typing it in, I think you can do this right here for typing it in for the x-intercepts. But if you need a decimal, then you'd have to get that calculator. So we're looking at the square root of 6 over 3, which is, according to my calculator, let's say square root of 6 over 3. Yes. Okay. So square root of 6 divided by 3. All right, so this is 0.81. So this is 1 plus 0.81 and 1 minus 0.81. Okay, so that's 1.81. That's pretty easy. And this one's going to be not negative, 0.18 approximately. Okay, and so these are my approximations for my x-intercept, and on my graph, that might be important. So I have 1.81 and 0.18. And there's my graph. Okay, because these are x-intercepts, but they are decimals. And so you have to really estimate with those. All right? Okay. This one we already said opens downward, so that's an answer that you're going to type in. The vertex is an answer you have to type in. The y-intercept, check the format. They may just want the -1. Just be careful. The axis of symmetry, it has to be in the x equal. Make sure, check the format on that one. The x-intercepts, they're not going to want the decimals. I'm pretty sure they want the quadratic formula format. So there you go. And then, of course, the graph. All right. So yeah, this one's number 6. This one's a little different, but I wanted you to see how this works. That the quadratic formula does give you x-intercepts. And I also wanted you to see something very significant here, and that is the vertex is part of that quadratic formula. I wanted you to see that as well. All right, it's just math, y'all. Hope this helped. And next up is word problems using quadratic functions. It's just math.